This is TWiT.
Normally we end the show with obituaries. This is an important one. I wanted to begin the show with the passing of Gordon Moore. He of Moore's Law, founder of Intel, age 94. Story from the Register with this quote: "Impossible to imagine the world we live in today without his contributions." It's funny because
the last of the trade crusade. So, Shockley was an engineer who drove the industry, but was an absolute. Hey, I'm not going to say the word, but the traitorous eight split out and started their own chip companies.
That's such a great story.
We have the world we have.
Yeah. So Shockley in the 50s, 1956, was the first microprocessor company, and Robert Noyce was there. Gordon Moore was there. 6 other engineers joined them, left the traitorous 8, I love that, to found Fairchild Semiconductor. And Fairchild, then throughout the 60s, in 1968, Moore joined Noyce and Andy Grove, and they founded Intel. And really, without this guy, Gordon Moore, I don't know what the tech world would look like. He was very much a part of the microprocessor revolution.
Silicon Valley would still be full of orange trees. It
actually was prune
Apple
orchards.
Park would still be a park.
They were actually prune orchards, believe it or not orange trees. That's down south. And I know that because the big mall in Silicon Valley is called the Prune Yard, which if you didn't know is prune orchards, you might say that's not a great name.
No, it provides the idea of movement, but yes.
Yes. Move on through the prune
yard. If
yard.
Ever going to do a Silicon movie, it would be Traitorous 8. Just a perfect title.
Oh, it would be, you know what, that would be, the story is amazing. That would be a great movie. I'd like to see that. Moore, of course, most famous for Moore's Law, and of course every obituary leads with Moore's Law. He was kind of embarrassed that it was called Moore's Law.
It wasn't a law. It was an engineering prediction based on solid science. But I know what you mean. I mean, back when Intel was doing Intel developer forums, we'd take a sweepstake among the foreign journalists, how long it would be before they mentioned Moore's Law.
Yeah.
And it never went over 10 minutes. You had to get in there really early to win the prize.
It's kind of like Godwin's Law, where, you just know the conversation is going to get there. His observation was that the number of transistors on an integrated circuit would double every 18 months. Actually, it says 2 years here, so maybe it was 2 years. And
14 nanometer.
And it's true. Here we go from 1970 to 2020. Here's a graph showing that doubling. It's almost exactly doubling every 18 months, every 2 years. And doubling transistors generally means doubling compute power, right? So the Intel 4004, which had about 2,000 transistors, leading up to our modern processors, which have more than 50 billion microprocessors or transistors in a single die. It's kind of an amazing number. And that's really, that in a nutshell tells the tale. Sorry?
I was going to say, they kind of built a rod for their own back on this, though, because they keep on stressing it so long. And once you get down to 2 nanometer levels...
Yeah, we might be at the end of it, right?
It isn't going to function anymore.
We're not only at the end of Gordon Moore, we're at the end of Moore's Law, possibly. Yeah.
Well, exactly. But then now they're saying, okay, we'll stack processors on top of processors, and that will keep Moore's Law going. I mean, it was a great engineering prediction. He was a fantastic engineer, and by all accounts, a lovely chap. But, technology moves on.
So it was Carver Mead at Caltech who in 1975 popularized the term Moore's Law. Gordon Moore never called it Moore's Law, and that's, I think, why he was a little embarrassed. And actually, the misquote that I gave you of 18 months actually came from an Intel executive, David House. Moore's Law really was every 2 years. So, and I guess we're at the end of that.
Leo, so that sensationalist journalists can say that it's dead every year.
Right.
It's not as dramatic.
Right. Is it dead?
It's always dead. Every year, Moore's Law is dead. And then they find like a loophole. Like, all right, we don't have a process shrink, so we'll just double the amount of cores. Okay, we can't double the amount of cores, so we'll just put in two processors. Now, it's a shell game.
Moore himself, about 15 years ago, said, it can't continue forever. The nature of exponentials is you push them out, and eventually disaster happens. In terms of the size of transistors, you can see we're approaching the size of atoms, which is a fundamental barrier. It'll be 2 or 3 generations before we get this far. This is in 2005, but that's as far out as we've ever been able to see. We have another.
Or you hit the thermal envelope of the encasing, and then it doesn't matter if all that power only lasts for 3 seconds.
We're now looking at photonic computing, which doesn't have that same limitation. So it might. I don't know. I mean, you're right. We've been saying it's the end forever. I don't know where we stand right now.
Well, Intel announced angstroms, right? Like they put up their roadmap.
Yeah, they don't want to call them nanometers
5
anymore.
Or some years.
Yeah. They need a new smaller unit. It's fascinating. Anyway, a pioneer of the industry. 94 is a nice long life. I would be very happy to make it to 94. But he has passed. He passed with his family surrounding him in Hawaii, where he had spent much of his time later.
And what a legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.